My name's Caleb. Won't go through introductions too much here, but you are in this session is titled Building Budgeting Confidence through FYE courses. So first year experience type of courses and really highlighting how Intuit for Education's resources in partnership with folks in higher ed can impact students' budgeting confidence, intent to budget, all of those things that we really want to kind of build up those skills around budgeting in. And so I'm joined here by my friend and colleague Amgad Hussien from the University of Buffalo, and he's going to introduce himself, and we're going to kind of tag team this presentation. So, Amgad, you give a little introduction for us this afternoons.
It is the afternoon. Yes, sir. Good
Yeah.
afternoon, everybody. My name is Amgad Hussien. I'm the Financial Wellbeing Program Coordinator over at the University of Buffalo in New York State, the SUNY system. Um, just a quick introduction. I have been in my position for a little over 2 years now. I am kind of the founder of our financial wellbeing program, and we are working to build it up. And we did a great collaboration with Intuit for Education that is helping us significantly with that.
Awesome. Thanks, Amgad. So I'm going to kind of kick us off here, and then we'll pass it to Amgad. Again, the resources that we're talking about in that last session, if you haven't created an account, I would encourage you to. Um, we can drop the link. Maybe one of my colleagues can drop the link to the Intuit for Education site where you would go to create an account. We're really going to be focused in this session on the first year experience resources. So you would find these resources in the courses a tab under first year experience course, and then there'll be a budgeting, a credit, and a taxes lesson. For the purpose of today's conversation, right now we're going to be specifically talking to the budgeting for college lesson. So that is the focus. So just as a start here, one of the key pieces, we mentioned a little bit of this last session as well, but really the driver of all of the content that we create, we work to ensure that educators are at the center of it and that the student voice is what we're designing to. And so to start out in building these first year experience resources, we started just by interviewing a ton of first year students that had just finished their first year, second year students, even a few senior students that said, what would you have wanted to know in your first year about personal finance? Open the door. What about money would you have wanted to know, or what would have benefited you? So just a few quotes there. What stuck out to us at least, and kind of what will be reflected then in the resources that we created. One being there's this real challenge for first year students. They are new to having kind of autonomy, and that means making decisions about social life and friends and work and studying. And money is at the center of that. And so a lot of the students reported back to us that just those decisions were really tricky. And they would love a space to practice and a heads up as to like, how do I navigate talking to my friends about that, or pre-planning my budget in relation to my social life. So that was a big piece of it. Obviously, there's the idea of just a tool. A lot of students are using a spreadsheet or nothing or their banking app to be able to track some of their first year expenses. That really stuck out. The other thing that really came up consistently is as students got in their first year, maybe a Pell Grant refund, or maybe a student loan, not Pell Grant, they got a Pell Grant or they got a student loan refund, a big chunk of money on the front end of their, August, September timeframe. That set of money really needs to last at least until December, maybe even throughout the whole year. And students weren't budgeting for that money to last, or they were running out in November, and then spring fees came up for enrollment in the spring term, and they were kind of caught in this pickle of, I spent all of my money already. How am I going to make it to the end of the term, let alone how do I get to a registration for next year? And so we wanted to kind of highlight that in some of the resources, that if you are receiving a larger chunk of money, maybe more money than you've ever had, you need to think about that being that money being responsible for the rest of the term. So a lot of just new decisions that students weren't prepared for. And so what we've created tried to kind of mirror some of that, allow students to practice. We decided in particular on approaching the first year experience. We know that first year experiences have limited availability. That's not like there's 7 or 8 weeks of personal finance included in most first year experiences. It's usually one section or one session within the 16 or 8 weeks. And so we're trying to figure out like how do we truncate down to teaching the most impactful things in that one session. And as I mentioned earlier, not all FYE instructors are super comfortable teaching personal finance. It may be something that they don't really want to, or they don't see themselves as experts, and they don't necessarily want to kind of position themselves as an expert. And so, again, all of this is kind of the feedback that we took in creating the lessons that we did. In creation of that lesson, we actually partnered with USC, the University of South Carolina first year experience, one of the really well-known kind of leaders or thought leaders in first year experience design and execution. They helped us create the lessons. They also helped us test it. Instructors gave us feedback on our lessons. We rolled this out in summer of 2025 with a test group of sessions at University of South Carolina, and then to a broader set of schools, University of Buffalo included, in fall 25. And so that's kind of the journey that we've went on here with these lessons. Just wanted to share that so that you knew, again, this wasn't something that Intuit from a corporate lens was creating with no input. This was really Intuit taking a back seat to the experts, to the student voice, to figure out what is it that we can create that can be of assistance. And so what we landed on, there's 3 FYE focused lessons. Again, in that courses tab, first year experience course, there's budgeting, credit, and taxes. Each of them have a distinct simulation included in them. The simulation takes between roughly 8 to 10 minutes in each of the sessions. So it's not the whole session. We're not asking students to sit on their phone the whole time, but there is a portion in the middle of each lesson in which students are interacting with a personal simulation. And it all includes pre-built slide decks, plans that you can pick up. And most schools that we've seen make small adjustments to them and of course include their resources at the end. Maybe they'll even, adjust the slide deck with their branding. All of that's totally okay. It's all downloadable and you can do with it what you'd like. It's available. And kind of Amgad will share a little bit about how they approached it at Buffalo and some of the delivery methods. And then we'll share some data at the end of this presentation as to what this looked like from an impact perspective. So Amgad?
Thank you so much, Caleb. So at the University at Buffalo, a couple years back, we used to have a first year education course called UBE 101 that every student had to take. A few years after, right before COVID, I believe, or during COVID, we eliminated that course. So when approaching this situation with with this collaboration with Intuit for Education, we faced the issue of how do we reach as many students in a first year education course as possible. So our big first step was to utilize the resources and the programs that we have on campus, and that's how we ended up at the Artho Eve Educational Opportunity Program, known as the EOP program. For public schools, for private schools, it's known as HEOP. I believe there are versions of this program throughout colleges throughout the nation. But basically, it's a student support service program. It's the largest one we have on campus. It's geared towards helping students who come from financially disadvantaged backgrounds, who need a little bit of extra student support, right? So they come to campus early. They come during the summer. They have a, what is it called? Basically like an introductory course that they have to take during the summer. It's totally free for them. They're given housing, food, and all that fun stuff. And then they come onto campus with extra support, and they have a first year education course that they take their first year in order to prepare them for the college experience that they're going to have. So we found that the EOP program would be an excellent population to kind of serve with this opportunity. So in that introductory course, we had about 50-minute sessions. All EOP students, like I said, have to take this course their first semester at UB. It's taken with their EOP advisors, so they have a personal connection with the instructor already, right? Because every EOP student has an EOP advisor assigned to them. Within the case study itself, we had 8 classes with about 25 to 30 students each, leading to between 200 and 225-ish students served entirely. All the lessons were directly delivered by me. I showed up to every single EOP course and made sure that I did the lessons personally. I worked directly with the director of EOP, a wonderful woman named Betsy, who was very excited about this opportunity to bring additional education and additional literacy and something that their students really needed to her students. So it was delivered by me, but the slide deck and the lesson plan and the budgeting lesson plan was prepared by Intuit with minor modifications, very slight modifications. I think it took me maybe an hour to do. Um, to the lesson plan itself, just so that I could tailor it a little bit more towards the population and towards the students and towards UB in general. Um, so yes, it was a fantastic experience, really. So the lessons themselves were very interactive. I found that that was what provided the most engagement. So I structured them as a conversation with the students, right? We had talked about different things. I had them participate in the lessons themselves. Intuit provided a lot of really great examples of ways that you can have students interact and participate in the lessons. So we worked together to kind of build the slide deck, and it worked as a fantastic way to reach these students. Then, as a part of that lesson, there was also a more private moment where they did the Fin Future simulation. So this Fin Future simulation is entirely designed by Intuit, and it was a fantastic way to simulate what first year expenses would look like for the average college student. And so students took about 12 to 15 minutes to get through the simulation. It was very personal. They did it on either their phones or their laptops, and it was very much reflective. It was designed to be as reflective as possible, and students found it extremely helpful.
Perfect. Yeah, and just a quick background on that simulation. That the premise of it is students kind of working through decisions in their first year. So we interviewed a bunch of students to find out what were the things they expected to spend money on, what were the scenarios that maybe caught them off guard, if there was something that created a barrier in their in their first year or a ton of stress in their first year, how could we kind of bring that to light in random ways, if you will, not predicted ways, but in within the simulation itself. So the premise is students work through, they make decisions in the simulation. As they make those decisions, a lot of them are spending oriented, and we keep track of the budget that they are accumulating throughout their first term. So, and I know this is probably pretty small, but in the example here on the screen, we're asking, where are you going to live on campus, off campus? If you live off campus, you're going to have utilities expenses, Wi-Fi, and if they choose Wi-Fi, then they're going to get kind of a semester's worth of expenses for their Wi-Fi. The goal being at the end, they can kind of see on a monthly basis and then a broader semester basis, how much do things cost and what kind of needs versus wants did they opt into. So just giving them, again, not overly visually interactive, I wouldn't say, but the premise of it was to prompt them with kind of thought exercise of what types of decisions are coming your way if you haven't faced them already, and how can you be kind of prepared for some of those decisions. So, excuse me. Part of this initial work was measuring the impact of this. So, as mentioned, when we create these types of things, our goal is to create something, test it, make sure if it works, great. If not, how do we adjust it to make ensure that it does have impact? And so we've kind of went through that process over the fall with about 4 different institutions that had opted into our first year experience study. And we're going to share a little bit of that data with you, specific from the University of Buffalo students. So it was a pre-post test. We administered a pre-test prior to the lesson being delivered, and then a post-test right after. And so these first couple slides really talk more to the pre-test, or do talk to the pre-test, of kind of where these students sat. So while we know that the simulation itself wasn't going to have content necessarily on Lasardi's big 3 financial literacy questions on inflation, interest, and risk, we did want to start out by just assessing those students up against those big 3 financial literacy questions to give us a perspective of kind of where they sat more broadly. And so the data you're seeing here, the blue has the representative numbers from Buffalo, and then the darker blue black would be the National Post-Secondary Student Aid Study from 2020. So just giving us a little bit of a benchmark as to where these students sat. Again, Amgad, you mentioned your students kind of coming from different backgrounds or financially disadvantaged backgrounds, maybe to be somewhat expected then that some of these were a little bit lower than the national study.
Yes. So with the EOP program specifically, these students are very familiar with risk, right? They're very familiar with living paycheck to paycheck. They come from backgrounds where they don't necessarily have the opportunity to prioritize learning about interest or learning about inflation because they're just trying to figure out where they're going to get their next meal, how they're going to pay for college. They have priorities. The priority is survival. And much like a lot of college students, they don't have time to kind of learn about these more in-depth, more complicated topics that aren't immediately relevant to their current situation.
Yep. Perfect. So again, that was just more of a baseline of kind of giving us some place to compare the students to give a place to start, if you will. So the second thing that really popped up, and this was across all schools, but in particular with Buffalo, was this alignment of the students' perception of budgeting and kind of their desire to budget versus what they're actually doing. So you're seeing here 59% of the students think it's very important to budget and save. The majority of them highlighting that yes, this is something that a financially healthy person would be doing, but in reality, only 25% of them are actually doing it. So there's kind of this gap here between what I say is important and what I'm actually doing. And again, this was not just Buffalo. This was really across all four schools that we measured, but could be lots of different things. And we dig into the data a little bit later as to maybe what would be causing this. Is it a lack of confidence? Is it that they don't necessarily have the tools to be able to create that budget? Is it for me, if in high school I was just lazy, like, yeah, I know that. I knew, or in college, I knew that this would be something I should be doing, but maybe I'm just not putting the time and effort into it because I don't think it's that important. So, I know, Amgad, I know you chatted with a few students as well after the lesson. What kind of stood out to you?
So budgeting was a huge topic for these students, right? They thought that like the data shows that it's crucial to do so, but again, these students are kind of doing their best just to get by as it is. The cool thing about that is that I actually meet with students one-on-one to do one-on-one financial wellness coaching as part of my program, and a lot of students came to me afterwards asking about how to do so, how to meet, to create a budget, to learn how to do so, how to work together, somebody to hold them responsible or accountable. Very frequently in these one-on-one coaching sessions, I'm meeting with students just to hold them accountable to a budget. I meet with them once a month, once every 2 weeks, etc. So I found a large influx of EOP students showing up to my sessions following our budgeting conversation.
Yep. Great. The last kind of pre-test measure that we dug into was financial worry. And so, again, just the premise of this was giving students a number of different options, kind of asking them if these are something that they feel confident and that they've got covered, or if they're a little bit worried about them. And so, 92% of the Buffalo students reported feeling some level of financial worry, or at least worry in moderate worry in at least two or more areas. Excuse me. So a big portion of them had these things on their mind, and as we know, the more kind of that anxiety plays into a student's experience, the more they start to lose confidence that they belong there. They start to worry about academic the tasks that they have to complete there. Lots of different things that make it a little bit harder for them to retain and succeed. And so, just definitely something that we want to be able to tackle. And we know, a 50-minute session in a first year experience isn't going to wipe all of these away. A lot of them, again, paying for college, financial literacy doesn't fix that problem if the cost of college is kind of weighing over you, similar with running out of money. But giving them the capability and confidence to start to take control of it, we hope is where some of that worry can be decreased at least slightly, kind of month over month. So again, I know this is a population that you're close to. Probably nothing unexpected here as to what the types of things they were worried about.
For sure. Money is a major stressor for all college students. Like it said, 92% of experience financial worry. But amongst this population, especially, money has had a tight control over their lives, and so they constantly are concerned about it. And so it is something that frequently affects their not just their academic performance, but also their academic retention, right? And retention is the big college word that we're all worried about right now. And so being able to address financial worry, being able to address students' ability to prepare for the what college is going to cost leads to that increase in that nice big flash word retention.
Yep. Awesome. So let's jump into some of the post data. Again, we administered this post test uh, after the 50-minute session, and we're focused on a number of different things. The first being, like, did the students enjoy this? Was this something that they found engaging in a way that was maybe, did we hit the mark with at least creating a simulated experience that they would say, yeah, like that was helpful and I enjoyed doing that more than the average day of EOP FYE. So generally, yes, we kind of knocked it out of the park here. By this point, we had made a few tweaks based on a couple other pieces of feedback from the summer. And so we added a few extra things to try to make it a little bit more engaging, some more surprises in there that kind of would keep them off guard. And so they generally, again, just sharing this, the 90% across the board. I'm glad I participated in that activity. This is a great way to learn about budgeting. All roughly 9 out of 10 students saying, yeah, this was something that I would tell other students that it was worth my time.
And
Uh,
this was kind of
yeah, go ahead.
shown, sorry. This
No,
was
please.
kind of very obvious in the student engagement during the sessions, right? A lot of the students were constantly raising their hand, constantly providing input during the session, talking to me the entire time, having this kind of back and forth that was really rewarding, not just for the students, but also for me. It was really great to be able to have these conversations with students. I was coming out of these sessions with these students and these classes with these students, feeling like I actually made an impact or feeling like I actually had a solid conversation that maybe students took to heart.
Yep. Awesome. And we saw that too in the different test sessions we did. It's interesting to see how they kind of interact with each other about what path they're going down in their simulated experience, because they do get different answers based on kind of where they go. So it turned into kind of a fun conversation between the students. Okay, so on the impact side, I've pulled out three kind of distinct impacts. We've got a big list of these here, but in relation to our three areas of efficacy, value, and budgeting intention, we're kind of our broader scope of what we were trying to impact. The proficient pre just highlights the percentage of students that were proficient in this space prior to the intervention. Again, part of that pre-test. So in the case of this efficacy, how confident are you in your ability to create an effective and realistic budget? Just 28% of students said, yeah, this is something I think I could actually accomplish. Again, in just 50 minutes of the lesson, the simulation, we went from 28% feeling confident to 63%. So not 100%. We know there's still some range to go there, but the idea of just doubling kind of where we started and more students feeling like this is something that they could accomplish, we felt like was a huge win. And again, we would love for this lesson to be, a month-long thing where we're checking back in, uh, having them create a budget as homework and coming back to the session and spending the first 5 or 10 minutes next session or 2 or 3 weeks down the line, really understanding their challenges in creating that budget. But even just for to fit a 50-minute session into FYE and having that jump was really exciting. So a couple of the other ones, how important is it to you that you regularly review your expenses? Again, talking to like, was this something that you think is of value to your life? Another big jump. We knew students were generally aware of that, but all the way up to 72%. And then the last one being, how likely are you to contribute to personal savings? The lesson itself has a focus on personal savings and really just understanding the different budgeting models that they have out there. And so, kind of highlighting that personal savings aspect is part of what's being taught via the videos and the conversations. And again, something that we saw a pretty big jump in. So, got any thoughts here on just kind of what stuck out to you as far as some of the impact?
Absolutely. With the part of the lesson that talked about emergency savings, it was a really crucial part of it. And I think that's what had the biggest impact on, especially that last budgeting intention question. A lot of students engaged with that. They talked about what different experiences they have trying to form personal savings, and kind of had that conversation with me again about how they can maybe maneuver that or manage that better.
Yeah. This is the broader set. We'll have these decks available to you. This is obviously a tough slide to review, but know that there was pretty significant jumps, and again, not just with the Buffalo program, but really across the board with all of the schools that participated in the efficacy of it, their confidence, and then beyond that, kind of their intention to budget, their intention to change some of their spending habits. Again, we know this doesn't fix all problems from a financial perspective for students if they're at a financial deficit, but we do know as well that being able to, give them the skills to manage where they're at is super crucial. So the last thing I want to point out is just a shout out to Amgad. The delivery, I think, from you really created these massive jumps. And again, we saw jumps, increases in these measurements across the board at all of the schools, but Amgad in particular at Buffalo had some of the highest marks from where students started. And I think that's a testament to your expertise and experience, Amgad, and just your approach to this. But anything from your mind as you think about giving kind of advice to others and teaching this type of lesson that you would want to pass along?
Absolutely. I thank you. I try not to hype myself up too much, but it is very rewarding and feels very nice to know that there was such a massive impact amongst my students specifically. But when it came to working with these students, they were hungry for this information. They wanted to talk about this, right? But they weren't necessarily comfortable about talking about this. A lot of these students come from backgrounds where conversations about money are not a frequent or common thing, right? Money conversations are uncomfortable, they're awkward. I come from an immigrant background myself. My parents, I'm first generation. And my parents never talked about money. Money was a very hush hush topic. And so with that, giving them the space and the openness to talk about this conversation, being more casual about it, right? I didn't show up in like a full suit and tie. I showed up dressed casually, like in my everyday. Being just open and honest with these students, talking about the different things that they could do was a crucial part of getting them to engage with me, right? Because they want to have these conversations, they know they need to have these conversations, but they're not necessarily comfortable doing so unless you provide them that space and that opportunity to do so.
Yep. Awesome. So, finishing up here, we got a couple minutes here. Any just last comments, kind of what you learned, what you would do different, kind of in the coming terms?
Yeah, absolutely. This slide kind of reiterates what I just said, right? These students want this information, they want to learn about it. But another cool thing that I actually experienced when doing this was the instructors, right? The instructors saw an impact in their students because I met with these students once. I sometimes met with them again and for one-on-one financial coaching, but not with all of them. But with the instructors themselves, they're their UOP advisors. They meet with them at least once a week, I believe, if not at least once a month, right? So they're regularly meeting with these students to see what this impact is like. And I have had multiple instructors come back to me and be like, hey, are you coming back for the fall for our next cohort? Are you doing this again? We want to request you again. Are there additional budgeting lessons or additional lessons about other topics that we can do? So it's really important to not just connect with the students, but connect with the instructors, because creating that space where students are comfortable and creating that bond between the student and the instructor, and then the instructor and yourself, kind of creates this awesome triangle of trust. And so it works out really great. And just it was phenomenal, honestly. It was a great
Awesome.
experience to have.
Very cool. So, finishing up here again, these are the resources that we talked about. This is in the Intuit for Education portal. Under courses, under the first year experience course, it's personal finance for college students. There's budgeting, which is the lesson we talked about today. There's a credit lesson that has students work through a credit simulation, kind of highlighting the types of financial behaviors that impact your credit, what makes your credit go up or down. And then we also have a taxes for college students that has students work through an actual tax in TurboTax. They're filing for a 1099 sample person. So there's lessons, there's videos attached to all of these. All of them fit into a 50 or 75-minute structure. For the taxes one, if any of you, I saw a few mentions earlier about athletes. We have a tax lesson for NIL athletes as well. If you have athletes on your campus that are getting name, image, and likeness funds as part of their athletic experience, and you are on the hook for teaching some of that, we've got a lesson specifically in here for NIL athletes, having them work through some tax information. So would encourage you to check that out. And then the final thing, if you do want to hit some of those resources, I've got three different things for you. One, the QR code on the left are the lessons that I just highlighted. It's just going to be a direct link there. You will have to sign in to access those or create an account to access those. The research that we talked about today is actually published in two different spaces. So the impact research that we talked to from Buffalo, and then we have several other schools included in there. This middle QR code will take you to a white paper on just kind of working through all of the intricacies of that resource, of that research and the findings. And then on the right here would be more of a case study approach. So highlighting with interviews with each of the schools that we partnered with, how they implemented this, what worked, what didn't, kind of lessons learned, if you will, from four different schools on implementing budgeting in first year experience courses or first year experience type courses. So three different resources. I'd encourage you, I'll leave this up on the screen here as we finish up this session. If you have questions, again, let us know. We would love the other part of this is we would love your feedback on what's working, what's not. I saw some pieces in the chat that we'll definitely take into consideration. So if you have other needs in FYE or maybe there's a professional development opportunity to help upskill your FYE instructors, all of those things are of interest to us, and we want to support you in those ways. So get in contact with us, take a look at the resources. We've got about 5 minutes now for break. So the next session will start at 1:50 Eastern time. So we'll give you 4 minutes or so here to go grab a drink, take a bio break. You'll be back in this room for the next session, which is with our friend at Phil Schumann from the Higher Education Financial Wellness Alliance. He'll be talking about the new competencies that HEFWA is working on creating and sharing out. So thanks for joining. Amgad, thanks to you. Just appreciate all of your hard work here and the impact that you're making. And stick around here. We'll have a few more sessions coming up this afternoon. Thanks
Thank
for
you
joining.
so much, Caleb.
Yep, thank you.